Hello, and welcome to the Did You Know You Could Do That with DraftSight presentation. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. My name is Raymond Busboom. I'm an industry business consultant here at Dassault Systems. I have going on about 25 years of experience in the CAD world, both in the 2D and the 3D markets. I was asked to coordinate a few of these sessions this year, and one of the things that I wanted to do was throw together a whole bunch of tips and tricks and things that I thought or have come across my desk that I really have enjoyed learning about. So I've kind of categorized these into 4 session topics. They are the creation of entities, the management of said entities, the data that you can have behind the scenes, and then I've just kind of got this other category that I thought was really cool. I'm going to call it bonus. So before we begin, again, I want to direct you to the quote that I have up on the screen. The secret of success is to do the common things uncommonly well. So if any of these tips and tricks improve your day-to-day use of DraftSight, then it's a win, and you've definitely gotten your money's worth out of this presentation. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first section is going to be on the creation of entities. I'm going to walk you through how to use the boundary, the TB layer, advanced hatch properties, as well as using reference points and how best to go about using those. And then I've thrown in something with premium only, which is constraints that I think you will enjoy seeing. First thing I want to talk about is boundary command. So here we have a fairly complicated drawing. Marketing's come to us and say they want a border around the outside of the top view of the ship. So how can we easily get that? If I highlight a couple of those entities, it looks like a lot of them are good, but if you notice this back area, there's a lot of small little geometry that we'd have to spend time going to click through. So the first thing I want to do is I want to use isolate layer. Isolate layer allows me to focus in on certain layers and then just kind of hide or lock them as you're seeing here. Now, depending on the option that you have set for this will depend on what it does. So if I go and just search, you can see that isolate layer behavior, I have it set to lock other layers, and the other option is hide. So if you use isolate layer, you do have those two options, and your look would be a little bit differently depending on that. So now that I've isolated them, that means if I select all these entities, it's only going to select the entities on that layer. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create just a temporary rectangle that's going to go around this view. And the reason why is because we're really looking to kind of create, to find that interior boundary. Now that we have that rectangle created, we can use the boundary command. With the boundary command, we're going to take and we're going to go ahead and select the items just in that rectangle. You can select the view, you can select all entities. The closer you are, the minimal gaps that it finds. So now I'm going to go ahead and say hit OK and select inside of that. So it's highlighted it for me. I'm going to remove the temporary outside rectangle. And now what I'm left with is a polyline that accurately represents the outside shape of our boat. So the next step is to make it thick. Now if you noticed, I changed the thickness of this line to 1 millimeter and the view didn't change. So if I really wanted to see what that looked like, there's another option that we got to go look at. So we're going to go back to options, search on weight in the find command, and you're going to see that there's a line weight, and there's an option to display the weight in the graphics area. And in fact, we can adjust the scale of that as well. And so when I hit OK, now I can see the polyline. I can see what it created for us. I can adjust it. Here I'm going to throw it behind all the entities because I'm really using this as almost like a shading for this example. But you have options now, and you have the single polyline, all just using the boundary command. Last step is to unisolate those layers, and then all the layers go back to normal, what you originally had them set to. The next thing we're going to talk about is TB layer. TB layers turn on down at the bottom. You'll see the first icon on that bottom. And what it does is it takes, and as you create layers, or entities, it will throw them on specific layers or have them inherit specific properties. So first I'm just going to create a little bit of geometry. So let's throw a rectangle, a circle, arc, and line. So those are 4 different entity types. And as you see, when I create them, they're all on the current layer, which is 0. They're all set to bilayer because that's kind of the default DraftSight. So what I can do now is I can open up the TB layer options, and go in and take a look at how this is going to set up. So by default, everything is blank. I've went ahead and saved one just to kind of get a head start, but you can kind of see I've changed some of the colors for the arcs, the rectangles. And then you also have options for other more complicated or more advanced entities like Toolbox, and you have some default layers and different guides that you can set up. So now the two things on this, I'm going to take and just draw a line, and you can see immediately a difference. It's on a different layer. The other cool thing is I'm going to use copy and I'm going to use paste. So by copy and pasting, those are new entities. So again, it's inheriting those new properties from the TB layer command. Next topic is going to be a short one, but if you ever are seen in the Hatch dialog box, there is a fill tab, and the fill tab allows you to start doing blends, one color, two color. You can kind of see I'm doing two color. You still have all the Hatch options, but when you add this, you can see it provides a different type of hatch pattern. So again, if you're doing marketing drawings or any images like that, you can use the advanced hatch patterns to fill and blend in those areas and get sharper looking drawings. All right, the next section, let's talk about E-snaps and polar snaps. So here, I've started a line command, and as I hover, you can kind of see it shows me the center point of this circle. I'm getting the object snaps, which are like the intersections. But if I turn on E-snaps and I just repeat that, you'll notice that as I hover, now I'm getting these reference points. And they're going in the orthogonal direction right now. You can kind of see where I've hovered. It also shows those blue blip points. So I can use these to quickly draw out and find intersections and kind of align things instead of doing extensive extending and trimming. So we're going to turn on polar snaps now, and with the polar snaps I'm actually going to go to its options. So again, right click command line options. I'm going to type in polar in the find command, and we're going to see that by default the angles are set to 90 degrees. That's your ortho that you were seeing. So I can adjust these. I'm going to adjust them down to 30 degrees. You can also put any type of, you can add any of the angles you want if you needed to. You can set up a kind of an angle set if you would. So now let's repeat that command. We're going to go back into the line command. Now when I hover over, you can kind of see it actually snaps not only to the orthogonals, but in every 30 degree increments. And so that's what that ortho is doing for me. So I can easily grab that intersection, and if you notice, it's just now coming 30 degrees off of that blip point. So I don't even have to have an entity there. And that quickly allows me to create geometry. Here I'm going to take a horizontal line and go to the midpoint of that other shape. So these are very quick drawing inputs that allow you to create this geometry, again, without using a lot of extensive trimming and extending. That leads us into the last category of this section, which is going to be constraints. This is a premium only capability. So I'm going to go to the constraints tab toolbar. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple anchor points. I'm going to throw in some dimensions to kind of control the lengths of these lines. These are not just regular annotations. These are actually driving the length of those lines. That's why they get parameter value names. So I'm going to throw both, 3 lengths on there. And as I'm doing this, you'll notice that it's kind of pulling itself off. So we're going to add a couple coincidents. So it's got the intelligence to say, basically, no, I want you to always be connected, those 2 endpoints. And now that we've quickly kind of put this together, if we try to make changes to the drawing, maybe rotating, maybe pulling them around, you'll notice that that intelligence kind of stays. So you can kind of see the length of all those lines are going to be staying consistent. The endpoints are coincident. Now I can build in some intelligence. So if you're doing some complicated mechanism layouts, this is an easy way to quickly lay out a little bit of intelligence and use it to kind of find exactly what you need to from your design standpoint. So now let me show you a little bit more of a complicated example. So here one I've already created. There's a combination of blocks and entities in this. But if I go ahead and move this endpoint, you can see that all of my blocks are staying connected because I've got some concentric relationships set up with them. I also have a parameter list. These are some of the dimensions that I added. So if I double click, you can see the length of this member. I can adjust it. And that reference dimension on the right is automatically adjusting as well, to showing me what that travel needs to be. So again, if you're doing complicated mechanism layouts, this is a great way to add a little bit of intelligence help lay out, get your sizes for your design all set, all within inside of DraftSight. The next category is going to be management. So I'm a big believer of blocks. If you've ever used a 2D, you use a lot of blocks. But recently, for a lot of my day-to-day interactions, I've been starting to use groups, and I want to show you why on that. And then we're going to explore the tool matrix and some advanced layer management that I've touched base on other sessions. But again, I think it's super important because the average DraftSight user could use these skill sets. Now let's talk about blocks and groups. So here we have a drawing. It's made up of blocks, as you can see. It's actually multiple blocks kind of all joined together. So if we wanted to take and kind of group these, move them as one, definitely an option would be to create another block that encompasses them all. But probably a better design decision would be using the quick groups. So to do this, on the home toolbar, you'll see on the top right, there's the quick group command. We're going to select all the entities, and we're going to go over and we're going to click group. By doing so, now if I select that, the whole thing will move as one entity. So it's very easy to kind of move them. If I do a copy, obviously it's going to copy. I can slide it, stretch will work. So one of the other options though, and this is the cool part, the difference between group and blocks, is if you look at the toolbar, there's a little selection option. You can turn off that selection, and now when you go to select an entity within the group, it's going to act like it isn't grouped. So you have this capability of basically combining the entities, selecting them as one, or unclick the button and you can operate as if they weren't grouped. And this is very good for grouping a lot of like entities together. So you can kind of see stretching this works out pretty well. And then if I go back and click on the button again, it's all grouped back in one selection set. So if I take and I might want to make a copy of this, we can copy it. Again, it's going to act just like a block in this regard, and we can copy it and we can set it into another location. So very easy to manipulate a lot of entities at one time using groups, and allows you to again, use it as all, or you can kind of edit them as one. The options are up to you. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about toolbars. So I'm going to switch over to the classic menu real quick, because this is all toolbar heavy. So, if you are liking the commands and how they're laid out, or you want to create your own custom toolbars that have all of them, kind of set the common use commands, you can. If you're using the drafting and annotation view, it's more of a ribbon style. So you get a lot of these commands that are kind of embedded into kind of these drop-down boxes. So if you want to mix and match the two, the easiest way I can suggest is using the tool matrix. So you can turn it on by right-clicking on the ribbon, going to tool matrix, put a checkbox it, and then if you come back, you can go to your toolbars, very similar, right-click on the menu, and you can turn on the toolbars that you want to use. So in this example, we're going to just pick a couple, the draw, my favorite one is the macro, and we'll do the PDF toolbar. Go ahead and turn them on. Now with each toolbar, you'll see this little dotted line at the top or the left side. If you click and drag that, you can just drop it over into the tool matrix, and you can see exactly what it's doing. It's combining these toolbars. So I can still keep my screen very clean, use the ribbon, but if there's common commands, I can put them over in the tool matrix, and I just have to click that tab to turn it on and use those commands. So it's a way of organizing commands very simply and easily. This is one of the areas that I think a lot of people could use, just a little bit more information on. And I found out a few new things as I was putting this together myself. So I kind of want to dive deeper into it and share with you some of those tips and tricks and kind of walk through. So there's two areas inside of this that we're going to really kind of focus on. So if I go back over, I'm going to show the model, and we're going to go to the home. You're going to see that when I pull down this little layer box, you can see that I can have the layer states show up. These are kind of like predefined layer settings. So whether the layers are off already or they're on, visible, frozen, locked, it doesn't really matter, but it allows you to kind of take a snapshot of the layers as is and then be able to quickly kind of go back to them. So if I look at the PDF neighborhood, I'm just going to drag this down. You can kind of see it's showing again, these regional areas that we use to calculate the areas. If I go all, this just turns on all my layers. And then we can also just do a floor plan, which is a nice, easy way of just saying this is now the concentrated area that I'm working on. So how do you create these layer states? And so the easiest way to create them is to actually set up the layers how you want to see them and then create the layer state. And then basically you're just going back to it. And so let's talk about that. So I'm going to open up the layers manager. And the layer manager, I'm going to kind of resize this so you can kind of see what's going on. There's a lot of layers in this drawing. So the first thing is down here you've got these filters. These are predefined filters, and they're really useful. So if I want to just see all the hatch or just see the title block. And one of the things that I hope you picked out is I was using these filters in two ways. Not only was I looking at the actual layer set where we were turning on, but I was also using this nice little reverse filter, and the reverse filter allowed me to select everything else outside of that layer set. So I didn't have to create a all but title block. I just needed to create title block and just use this reverse filter. So that was very, very convenient. By the way, if you happen to use these layer filters, and I've done this a time or two, sometimes I'll come in to the layer manager and nothing will show up, and I'll be like, oh, what went wrong? Nothing went wrong. I just left one of the filters on or off, and I wasn't expecting it. So to create the layer filters, there's, the first thing you're going to do is let's just go to Edit Filters, and we're just going to add a group. Okay. And then if you'll notice under here, we have a new group filter 1. So I'll just go ahead and rename that. And in this particular case, we're just going to use PDF as an example. So there's nothing in here, so it's going to be blank, and you were like, oh, something went wrong. No, nothing went wrong. It just activated when I renamed it. So I'm going to switch back over to all. If you notice in this particular drawing, we've got some kind of keywords in here that we're using on our layer names, and this is important. So if you're trying to manage a lot of layers, having some of these keywords makes it super simple. Up here on the top right, I'm going to use my filter expression. So the easiest way to do this is using the wildcards. Help has a really good section on this. Asterisk is is for all. Question mark replaces kind of I believe a kind of a character if you wanted to use that. So there's a lot more advanced stuff you can do in this filter. But what we're going to do is go star PDF. Now, if you notice, there's nothing showing up just yet because we need to put a star on the back side of it, and then that's going to pick up anything that has PDF in the layer name. So that was an easy way of kind of isolating all the PDFs. But now we got to take these and we've got to put them into our actual filter down here. And how that's done is with drag and drop. So I'm going to take, and we can just kind of specify all, and then I can drag it. So as soon as I start dragging a selection, this filter area kind of pops open, and I can just kind of drop it on my PDF. So now if I go to all, I'm going to have to clear this filter. So it is actually set to all. This is one of those things, but I've got this star PDF star. So it's saying basically show me everything and then isolate it to PDF again. So let me remove that. So there's all. And then if I go back to PDF, there's my PDF. So that's kind of an easy way of showing this. So for the PDF, what we're going to do is, again, we're just going to say, let's reverse this filter. We're gonna just specify all. We're gonna turn off everything, and then we're gonna unreverse it. We're gonna specify all, and we're just gonna show. So what I just did there is I literally just turned off everything but the layers that you see on PDF. So now you can see I've got just the layers with PDF turned on. So from here, now we can kind of set and create our layer state. So a couple different ways of getting the layer state dialog box. The first is you actually have a button called layer state. You can also hit this new layer state down here or manage to go to the dialog box, or from the layer manager in the top right, you'll see layer states as well. The easiest way is just, for me, I'm going to click on the layer state dialog. That brings up this. And so for this one, we're going to add a new one. I'm going to give it a name. So in this one, I'm just going to say Raymond. And then what we can do once we have it is we can hit the save button. And what the save button does is takes all the existing current settings and stores it under this layer state. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. Yes, I want to overwrite. Now I can go close. Now, if I look at the layer state dialog drop-down list, or the layer state drop-down list, you can see now I've got Raymond in here. So I can switch to PDF neighborhood. I can go all, but now I also can have just just those PDF layers. The next section that I want to touch base on deals with data. And there's really 2 points that I'm going to do a deeper dive into. First one is around fields, and the second one is using Microsoft Excel as a table object inside of your DraftSight drawings. Next thing I want to talk to you about are fields. Fields are typically used inside of your title block for like drawing names or locations, etc. But I'm going to show you a different utilization of it. So here we have a block, 2 attributes associated to it. In the value of the attribute, I can right click and say insert field. And you can kind of see some of the, again, standard things that you would be putting or inserting into your title block. But here's an option that is for entities. I'm going to select the entity and I'm going to select that polyline region. Now you can see I've got a couple different options for property. On this particular one, I'm just going to pick layer as an example. And I'm going to insert another one, select layer, again, select the same entity, and this time I'm going to use the area. Now I've got options for what format to use. You've got this additional format information. This is where you can kind of set up, how many zeros do you want, any conversion factors. So here I'm converting it from square meters to square feet, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And now I've got this block that's got these intelligent text objects inserted into it. So if I go back over to that region now, and I'm just going to select on it, and then grab one of its grips, and I'm just going to make a quick change here. And then what you need to do is hit regen for, to kind of have it rebuild those fields. But you can kind of see how my square foot has updated. Last example I want to talk about in this section is inserting an OLE object. You can use that with the insert object command. You can create from scratch, or you can create from file. In this example, I'm going to go ahead and create from file. What this does is this embeds in this case, an Excel worksheet into DraftSight. And I can go and edit that embedded worksheet by double-clicking on it. This gives me all the power of Excel inside of DraftSight. So in this particular example, I've got a little bit of Visual Basic code behind the scenes. So when I hit refresh, it's going to go sum up all the polyline areas and return them based upon their layer. Important to note here is you can show the different table by using those grip points and sliding those around, and then I can just show just the part of the table I want to see. This gives us a lot of capability to insert a lot of information very quickly and manage it through the application like a Word document or an Excel document that you typically would be saving that information and combine it with the DraftSight drawing. Our last category is the bonus one. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that I've used Find to navigate my options throughout the entire session. So we're going to talk specifically about that. We're going to talk about the burst command or the lack thereof inside of DraftSight and how do you get around that. I'm going to show you some unique things using UCS, even in the 2D world, how you can use that command to your benefit. I'm going to show you a great example of using the DraftSight data in other applications. And then finally, I'm going to show you how DraftSight is being used in combination with 3D Drive on the platform, so from some other platform applications like 3D Creator. You've seen me use this Find command in the Options dialog box throughout this session, and I think it's important to kind of point it out specifically. So here are the options, and there's many different options to control many different things inside of DraftSight. And one of the things that I was doing is just coming down to the bottom and using the Find to start typing in what I think the option might be, and it's going to give me a quick list of guesses on what I'm looking for. And you've seen me use this over and over again, and it's been a very valuable kind of way of finding and editing options without knowing exactly where at in the user interface that exists. The next thing we're going to talk about is the burst command. So if I type in burst, nothing happens. All right, burst is an AutoCAD command. We do inside of DraftSight have something called remove attribute. And it does the same thing. Basically explodes the blocks and keeps the values of the attributes as text versus resetting them. So here I'm going to go back to options and I'm going to create a new alias. And in the command prompt, I'm going to type in remove attribute. That would be the name of the DraftSight command that we want to tie to it. And in the aliases, I'm going to type in burst. So this is, again, kind of creating, if you're familiar with AutoCAD, this is one of the commands that didn't come over. I'm going to create my own. Now when I type in burst command, you can see it shows up in the list. And now I have the exact same functionality as I had it in AutoCAD. Sometimes you need to start moving objects that follow other objects. You don't need to, it's not the same kind of across X or across Y. So here I have a circle and I want to be able to freeform it, drag it up and down this line. So one way to do this is use the user coordinate system. So if you use UCS, type E for entity, I'm going to pick that line. You can see my UCS has changed. So now X is up and down that line. So now when I go to move command, if I turn on ortho, which a shortcut to do that is hold down shift key, or you can use your F8 key or the icon down at the bottom. But just shift key gives me kind of a quick ortho when you're inside of the command without turning it on all the time. But you can see now I am moving and aligning this with that line. So very easy to do. If you have a lot of complicated drawings with a lot of angles, this is something that you can take advantage of, UCS, and then tie it to an entity. And to kind of get back, you can type in UCS and you can see the option for world, and you can reset that from there. Here we have Microsoft Word on the right and DraftSight on the left. And so in this particular case, keep in mind, I used some sample text in this project file. I didn't get permission from the customer, but what I wanted to show you is I'm going to take this section inside of DraftSight and I'm just going to copy it to my clipboard. Okay, I'm going to go over to Microsoft Word and I'm going to go ahead and paste it, and the object comes over. And this is considered an OLE object, but it is DraftSight. So I'm going to double click on it inside of Word. And if you'll notice that it creates its own tab over inside of DraftSight. And whatever I do in this tab, it's going to change in Word. So I was zooming in, it was changing. I'm going to change the layer thickness and the layer color. Let's set it to blue and just kind of, again, give it a little bit of thickness. Say OK, you can see that that's changed. Now I can also turn on that option that we showed earlier, which is to, that line weight. So we want to be able to display the line weight in the graphics area. So we'll just turn that on for this. And you'll notice that those changes take impact immediately over inside Microsoft Word. So if you need to create beautiful looking presentations and drawings, or reuse that drawing data inside Excel or Word, this is an easy way to do it. Here we have 3D Creator. New to 3D Creator 2022 is the ability to export a flat pattern directly to 3D Drive. So you can see that option to export. Once it's in 3D Drive, then we can collaborate directly with DraftSight by opening it through the 3D Experience tab. And in this case, we're going to add a lot of different layer settings. So when we send it over to the machine, it knows where the folds are, where the cuts are, and the boundary. And so you can make these edits that are required for CNC very quickly. Where do you go from here? There's many different avenues to learn more about DraftSight. First one's 3D Experience World. You're here. There's a lot of other sessions, so you might have time to catch them. If you miss some sessions, they are recorded, so you can go back and you can grab them later. The very final session we're going to have our DraftSight meetup, where you'll get an opportunity for live Q&A. Don't miss the breakout session swim community created specifically for 3D Experience World. You can also join us on our swim community, DraftSight, and you can get that out by going to swim.3ds.com. This is a great avenue to post a lot of questions and get a lot of feedback from the worldwide DraftSight community. Additionally, if you go to our website, we have learning guides and manuals. And on our YouTube channel, we have an entire learning journey that you can go through to kind of help get you up to speed. It's a great resource if you're just starting your DraftSight journey. And the last thing we're going to talk about is we get a lot of questions about where the DraftSight help is. And if you look in the top right corner of your DraftSight session, you'll see the question mark. You can actually pull that down, and there's several different help options that you can go through. But again, it's a great resource. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all. Look me up if you do have specific questions. Again, my name's Raymond Busboom, and thanks again for attending today's session.